Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today I'm going to do a combination of a corner fan fold and a gravity dye. I'm also going to make a pair of ice-dyed socks that match. I'm starting with the shirt turned inside out and using either a piece of kite string or sinew and a washable marker, I'm going to draw an arc on the corner part of the shirt. Now I'm going to fan fold that line and I'm going to tie it with some kite string. I'm using kite string because I don't really want the white line that sinew would cause. I also want to allow the dye to move down the shirt. And even though a sinew line will still allow some dye movement on the shirt, when I tie with kite string, there's nothing to obstruct the dye from moving all the way down the folds. Once I have the initial line tied with kite string, I'm going to straighten the fan folds and continue tying with kite string going out toward the very end or the corner of the shirt. And to kind of shorten this fold, I'm going to fold the corner part of the shirt up on top of itself. I'm also going to add some fan folds going the other direction from the initial line. But I'm not going to fan fold the whole entire shirt or tie the whole entire shirt with kite string. I'm going to leave the rest of it, and that's where the gravity dye is going to come into play. I'm also going to ice dye a pair of socks at the same time. I'm going to tie these like a geode though. I found that it works out just as well if I put the socks together and tie both of them at the same time. So that's what I'm doing. I'm placing one sock on top of the other one. Then for this tie, I am using sinew because I want the white lines in the geode. I'm wrapping the sinew around the socks, giving it a couple of wraps and then pulling it as tightly as I can. So for the setup on this shirt, I have 2 plastic sawhorses, and in between the 2 plastic sawhorses, I've placed 2 long pieces of vinyl guttering. Then in between the 2 long pieces of vinyl guttering, I have a metal rack. I've placed the portion of the shirt that I actually tied with kite string on top of the metal rack, and I'm using my silicone cake molds to make an ice barrier around that portion of the shirt. I've got the rest of the shirt just dangling down below this metal rack, and underneath the whole entire thing, I have a plastic container to catch any of the runoff. I'm placing the silicone cake molds up close to the shirt and then using some wooden clothespins, which I'm attaching to the rack, to hold the silicone cake molds up close to the shirt. By the way, I have links to the silicone cake molds and all of that stuff down below in the description for this video. I also have the socks placed in a small container right next to the shirt. I'm starting by applying Razzle Dazzle from Dharma right at the very end of the tied portion of the shirt. Remember, because I folded this shirt over, some of these colors that I'm going to add right to this end portion are going to have 2 different lines of that color. Then to kind of encourage the dye to go down onto the other portion of the shirt, toward the bottom of this tied portion, I'm going to add some Razzle Dazzle in stripes, but I'm going to put the stripes going the other direction. I'm placing the dye going with the folds instead of against the folds. Next, I'm adding some deep purple from Dharma. I'm going to add that color both perpendicular to the folds and going along with the folds as well. Next, I'm going to use Huckleberry from Die Spin, followed by Ultraviolet from Dharma, and I'm ending with Dark Cherry from Die Spin. Now I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash over the top of the die. And I'm adding quite a bit because I'm going to add some pretty large chunks of ice to the shirt. And I want to make sure the ice, once it turns to liquid, doesn't wash out all the original soda ash from the soda ash soak. I need to have soda ash in the shirt so that the dye will bond properly. Now I'm going to place some large chunks of ice on the shirt. I found a silicone ice mold out on Amazon that's for 2-inch square pieces of ice. And that's what these are. I think it's intended to be used for whiskey, but they're a great size. It takes them a little bit longer to melt, and they work out awesome. I'll leave a link for those down below too. I've also taken and added a whole bunch of ice to my container that I have the socks in. And now I'm going to just randomly add the dye colors that I used on the shirt over the top of the ice for the socks. I'm also going to place an additional sprinkle of soda ash over the top of the dye for this too. Then I'm going to leave everything and let the ice melt. The intended purpose for the shirt is that the ice melts and pushes that dye that I put kind of on the edge of the shirt down over the edge and melts down the shirt. That's the goal anyway. We'll see how it works out. So here are some photos of how it went. And the dye was moving pretty well down the shirt. But after the first layer of ice melted, I came back and added another set of the large ice cubes to the shirt and allowed those to melt as well. Then I placed the shirt down inside of a plastic container that had a metal rack down in the bottom and allowed the shirt to process for about 24 hours. Placing it in the plastic container helped to keep it from totally drying out because once the shirt dries out, the dye won't continue to react with the fabric. It is still in the 90s around here, so if I left it outside, it would dry out within a few hours. I just left the socks alone though because since they're down in the muck, they won't dry out and that's not going to be a problem. To rinse the shirt, I did like normal by starting rinsing in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. Then I untied the shirt and warmed the water up to hot and continued rinsing to rinse out any of the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. I rinsed the socks the same way, and when they were both rinsing almost clear, I put them into my washing machine along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent and washed them using a hot water cycle. Okay, so both the socks and the shirt have been washed and dried, and here's what they look like. Okay, so let's start with the shirt. I think it looks really great. What do you guys think? It did work to go ahead and do like a combination of corner fan fold / gravity dye, and I think the colors look really pretty on the shirt. I do have kind of a few flecks of undissolved dye up on one shoulder. And of course, sometimes with the gravity dyes, depending upon the way the dye moves, you may have larger areas of dye in some spots and less dye in others, which is kind of what happened on the back of the shirt up toward that one shoulder. There's a pretty good sized chunk of darker dye up there. But I think that's one of the things that makes gravity dyes more interesting, is the fact that they aren't as uniform. I really do like the effect, though, of the darkness and the intensity of the dye down in the fan folded portion, and then how it just kind of blends out. Very watercolor looking, and I think it looks really pretty. And then here's how the socks turned out. And I think they look really pretty too. I think they're a lot more intense in color than the shirt is. I think part of that is because I allowed them to process in the muck, which is the runoff from the melting ice and dye. And the other part of it is because I didn't add quite as much ice. I did add 2 layers of ice to the rest of the shirt, and those ice cubes were each 2 inches square. So overall, I'm really happy with both the socks and the shirt. I think they look really pretty, and I enjoyed doing this experiment to see whether or not this could even be done. So now I have a whole new bevy of things that I want to try. But what about you guys? What do you think about it? Drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed watching me experiment with this, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.